Call the meeting to order. We'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As Mary Ann takes the roll, can we please put our cell phones on silent or turn them off entirely? Thank you.
Mr. Ditchell, Ms. Ruska, Mr. Jepson.
Here.
Dr. King.
Here.
Mr. Cindy.
Here.
Mr. Welch.
Yes.
Mr. Welch.
Okay, we have a quorum. I'd like to just start out by thanking four board members, Gary, Miss Laura, Mr. Cindy, and Mr. Walsh, making it here last week in our absence and making sure we had a quorum present so that we could pay the bills and pay the vendors and move along. I was out of town on a work detail. So the first item on the agenda is going to be a public hearing. Conduct a public hearing concerning the 2015-2016 budget. A quorum being present, the first order of business is to hold a public hearing on the budget, prepared in tentative form as set forth in the minutes of the meeting of the Board of Education held on July 14, 2015. The Secretary of the Board of Education has admitted an affidavit and certificate of publication from the Landmark stating that a tentative budget for District 208 for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2015 and ending June 30, 2016 was placed on file and was conveniently available at the district's administrative offices. Notice was given that a public hearing on said tentative budget will be held at 7 p.m. on September 8, 2015. Due notice has been given of the public hearing on the budget and all other statutory requirements preliminary to the holding of such public hearing has been complied with. Dr. Skinkis and Mr. McGinnis will present and explain the 2015-2016 budget and answer any questions from the board. Dr. Skinkis and Mr. McGinnis.
Thank you, President Welch. First of all, I just wanted to thank Tim McGinnis and all the administrative and support staff and all the faculty and staff that worked on this budget and worked with Mr. McGinnis and the principal on developing their accounts. We do a zero-based budgeting philosophy, so we do not just automatically roll over budgets and add a percentage increase. We specifically ask all instructional coaches, athletic coaches, activity sponsors, anybody that has a line item or budget in this account to really look hard at their budget every year and only request items and dollars that they need to get through the upcoming school year. And again, I think we've done a nice job. The board had originally requested that we try to come in with a balanced budget, and we have. There's a small surplus just under $40,000 for this year's budget, and Mr. McGinnis will go through the budget. There were also some final questions submitted by Mr. Walsh that we got this morning, so Tim will try to answer some of those before during this committee process, or hearing process, excuse me. Tim?
Yeah, as Dr. Skink has mentioned, we have a small surplus, $36,000. At the last meeting in August, the surplus was $44,000. One of the questions was to explain or to communicate some of the changes. The major changes from last month have to do with the position control as we hire people and we finalize exactly what their salaries are going to be, and as we finalize what the insurance is that they're going to have. That can cause somewhat of an increase in some of the expenditures, and it reduces the budget accordingly. We also had some revenue changes. We changed the amount of tuition revenue from $120,000 to $130,000 in the budget, and we changed the age group gymnastics budget up a little bit to reflect the actual revenue that we've received in fiscal 2015. There were some other questions on page 9. There was a question regarding the projected fund balances. I'm not sure exactly what that question was, though. It says see assumptions, but I'm not sure what that is.
But I sent a separate spreadsheet that I think it's a little confusing when you read the assumptions, and then you look at this document to see what in the assumptions, because they should be the big tick items, how do they address what the the, actual fund balances are. Because if you took just the numbers that are in there, you'd come up with a pretty significant difference of how it affects the fund balance. So, I mean, it's late in the game now, but I think I suggested it's like 3 years in a row. I'd suggest we save the spreadsheet and next year try to put it in a form that it's pretty easy so anybody picking up could see this, we put some items, we put dollar amounts, the effect. Other items, we say there's 3 point, whatever the increase is in FTEs, and don't say what the effect is. I don't think we put in the assumptions that we have the bond revenues either. I don't think they were listed on the assumptions. So I think we should make sure we have the big ticket items in the assumption, and they should be laid out in a way that, the community or anybody picking up could easily see what we're saying. That was kind of what my suggestion is. But I think, where we are is where we are for this year. I mean, we've used the format for a few years now. I just think we can improve on it so people can more readily understand it.
Okay. Some of the other questions I think had to do with a number of the stipends that were paid during the year.
I'll save you trying to figure out. I think it was confusing. Again, the assumption said the stipends are staying the same as last year.
Correct.
But the actual stipends are going up and down and all over the place. The net effect is there's a credit of about $12,000 if I did the math correctly. So, when I read the assumption and look at it, the assumptions say it's the same as last year, and then you start seeing all kinds of differences in the stipends. And I realize the reason. You got different people with different seniority, different clubs or whatever, but again, I think the assumptions are the starting point, and when it says they're unchanged and you start seeing they're changed, it kind of raises the question, why are we saying they're unchanged if a lot of them are changing?
Yeah, and saying that they're not changed, it's saying that the dollar
The
amounts that
rates.
we're paying are not, the rates are not the same. But if you have changes, as you mentioned, in personnel,
So, yeah.
then it's going to change the stipends up and down,
Okay.
so. Okay.
One thing that I think, too, and like you said, we said for this year, but we've tried to always use anything like 50,000 or more, 25,000. We try to come up with a number to put in these assumptions to somewhat limit them. So that could be why we didn't catch that to the difference of 12,000. We tried to find all the big ticket items that someone would say, hey, you made $50,000 increase or decrease, and you didn't put that in the assumptions.
I mean, I think you've improved every year. I'm just suggesting, here's another improvement we can make and have the assumptions match the numbers, and then, it's easy for somebody to go back and look and see, or the community to look at it and see, okay, now I understand what they were saying. That's my only suggestion. And I don't think it should change right now, because we're trying to get this thing approved, so just,
Okay,
Anything further?
no.
Were there any specific questions or anything on a specific item? A lot of them did refer to assumptions. Did you have any in the questions, though, that were related to a specific item? I know there was one on health and dental.
There was a question there on health and dental. Again, we added, I think, some personnel. We had 3 people certified, and then we added some non-certified. And that, obviously, those people pick up insurance, that increases the insurance. We also have people that may change from single to family or from HMO to PPO without going through and looking at every individual and seeing what their insurance was last year and what it was this year. It's hard for me to identify exactly what the
so
increase was.
I don't think we had an assumption on what the medical or dental would be, did we? The change. So it's kind of like the stipends. A particular
Yeah.
one could go up at a higher rate because a new person is in there or something, but,
Mhm.
okay.
Someone leaves.
What
and
is
that's-
do we know what the increase in our medical and dental is for this year?
I don't know the number off the top of my
But
head.
whatever
but I
it
can-
is, we included it?
Mhm, yeah.
Okay. I think that was the only other one.
Any questions on this side of the table? How about to my left? Any additional questions by the board?
I did have some questions. Is the certificate correct, Kevin?
For the landmark?
Yeah, and for our own, the secretary's certificate.
I believe it is.
Because the date on our secretary's certificate doesn't match the date on the landmark certificate.
Yeah, the actual publication date was the 22nd.
And we say that it was the
Certificate.
14th on our
Certificate.
certificate.
So we need to correct that?
Yeah.
The certificate says the 24th that it was published. It was actually the 22nd.
Right.
Mary Ann, can you correct that?
And then the other thing was the paper certification says it was published in Brookfield. Should it say that it was published in other communities, or do we only have to publish it in Brookfield?
I think when we put the Brookfield office, that covers the Brookfield, Riverside in this area.
Okay.
And so that's just the major main communities the school district serves. That's where we got in trouble with the bond hearing. The one time it said Downers Grove.
Right.
And then it went only to that. So I think that's what they call this, is the Brookfield.
Okay.
But it also covers North Riverside.
Right, Riverside and North Riverside.
Okay.
Okay, anything further? The meeting will now be open for public discussion, and all persons desiring to be heard will be heard at this time. The Board of Education welcomes and encourages the participation of its citizens in the business of the school district. Citizens are welcome to raise questions or make comments. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and cannot be combined. Please note the Board of Education will not answer questions or engage in dialogue during the visitor comments. If a person would like additional time to address the board, such a request should be submitted in writing 48 hours before the meeting to the superintendent. In addition, the Board of Education is interested in receiving suggestions and concerns from members of the community. Any individual may make a suggestion or express a concern at the district or school office. All suggestions and/or concerns will be referred to the appropriate level staff member or district administrator who is most able to respond in a timely manner. Each concern or suggestion shall be considered on its merit. An individual who is not satisfied after following the channels of authority may file a grievance under Board Policy 2:260, Uniform Grievance Procedure. Neither this policy nor the Uniform Grievance Procedure creates an independent right to a hearing before the board. For more details, please refer to Board Policy 2:230, Public Participation at Board of Education Meetings
Thank you.
and Petitions to the Board, and Board Policy 8:110, Public Suggestions and Comments, Public Suggestions and Concerns. So reaching out to the left-hand side, as I reach my hand, would there be any visitors on the left-hand side?
And this is all part of the budget hearing?
Correct, this is
Correct.
just on the budget.
Yeah, so your suggestions would be for the budget. And anyone on the right side, as I hold my hand out, would like to speak? Seeing that there are none from the public, I now declare the public hearing on the budget completed, and the regular meeting will now proceed.